I just wanted to touch a little bit on the election in France because Marine Le Pen, leader of the National Rally far-right party, she attempted to rebrand herself a bit this time after she lost, thankfully, in 2017, but she's back. She's going to be running, I guess, or her father, then her. They'll be running until the day they die. She was like, I'm just going to be a little bit more subtle this time around on the anti-immigrant Islamophobia stuff, but the dog whistles, we have an understanding here, racists here in France. And so she advanced to the runoff more narrowly than was expected. There was a candidate that many people were familiar with, the most prominent leftist in the race who fell up short, Jean-Luc Melenchon. He ran for president for a third time. He overperformed in the polls, but he did come, and he came within a few percentage points of overtaking Le Pen, but he did come up short. So that means that Le Pen is going to face off against the incumbent, neoliberal, anti-labor, centrist Emmanuel Macron. Like neoliberal centrists here in the United States, they've essentially calculated that it's more in their interest to appeal to the far right as opposed to appeal to any leftist priority, instead of embracing leftist politics, which we believe here would be a stronghold against fascism. I think that's the best way to stave off fascism. He's been giving little nibbles of anti-immigrant Islamophobic rhetoric to the French people, which essentially concedes that racism is legitimate. And when you concede that point to your opponent, then we're just talking about degrees of racism. And that's what this election, which is happening later in April, I think April 24th, is going to center around. Macron has targeted anti-Islamophobic groups in France, activist groups. He has been vocal about going against, quote, Islamic separatism. Think the way right-wing politicians here in the United States talk about Islamic extremism. You can apply that a bit more to our domestic terms. So point here is there, yes, is an appetite for Islamophobic rhetoric that someone like Le Pen is satiating, and Macron is trying to appeal to that. But there is also obviously an appetite for the leftist rhetoric that Melenchon was advocating for, and he overperformed because of that. But there is always only one direction in which neoliberal centrists tack to when they're trying to appeal to a larger audience, and that's to the right. So, like, as Macron moves towards flirting with like healthcare privatization, stuff like that, he's also conceding racist points to his opponent. We'll see how this turns out on April 24th. Most experts say he has a good chance. He is the incumbent, but this is kind of what we're flirting with here.
Do you want racism or do you want capitalism?
That's it. And that they're happy with those choices, at least, you know, in terms of the ruling
as far
elite.
as like elites setting up democracies, that's the best scenario for them, and they've been creating that scenario all over the world for a long time.
Yeah. Are you calling from France?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. What's your name?
I don't know if that's great, but my name is Jean.
Jean from France.
Yes. So I feel a bit lost because I've been a majority report watcher since quite a long time now, and I've bought into the idea that
Well, tell us a little bit about the election and your thoughts there.
Yeah, so I wanted Jean-Luc Melenchon to win, obviously. I think, so a general stance that I see a lot of people of the left having is that they will abstain for this election. I've asked around a little bit to understand what specifically was leading people to such stance. And so outside of the pretty common. I really can't vote right now. I don't feel like it. I've heard arguments such as maybe arguments that might be a bit reflective of how Macron is not fully well perceived and its politics is not fully well perceived in the international. So there is this argument that is prevalent, at least in my circles and in the media that I watch, that you shouldn't vote because you shouldn't vote for a far-right candidate and fascism. And I see a lot of people, and I don't fully disagree with that understand
that are frustrated with their choices between Macron and Le Pen.
For sure. And that really think that Macron is a neo-fascist candidate. And, there has been the deep ramping up of anti-Muslim rhetoric, arresting 400 children in their home because they refused to participate in a minute of silence for the death of a teacher that has been politicized to ramp up Muslim anti-Muslim rhetoric. There has been the inaction on climate change, which is pretty fitting for neoliberal politics, I would argue. That's something that weirdly brings some weird leftists to think that they should vote for Marine Le Pen because there is at least some supposed thing in her program. And
but at the same time, it's like, much like largely what we saw with Trump here, it seems she is and you're in, I've only done some reading, so this is, I'm asking if this is the case, if she is speaking about social programs as a, more vaguely, but as a fascist far-right candidate, if she were to win, would not enact those changes, more just using them for populism's sake.
I believe she would not.
Right.
That depends. There is some social proclivities that she has that clearly excludes migrants and all that, and on those specific social, let's say, advances, maybe she would do something, but this is not the kind of social advantage that we need in any case. So there is that. So I'm lost, and what is your opinion on the stance that many leftists have? Many leftist politicians have called for not voting. Many leftist activists have called for not voting. What do you both think of that?
I think it sort of focuses too much on voting. Like I personally, I don't know what I would do. I think it is a horrible choice. I wouldn't vote for Le Pen. Maybe you do. I don't know how elections work in France. I do know that abstinence alone doesn't send a message. I don't really think that works.
I agree.
So I think it's sort of like whatever people decide to do, whether they do the so-called harm reduction vote for Macron or don't vote at all. Like I don't think that's a moral failing, either one of those things. But I do think like an overemphasis on this might lead people to suggest that by not voting, that's also going to lead to someplace better than voting for one of the two candidates. And the truth is, probably like that's not going to change the path that this is on. It's going to take. I mean, France is very good at getting in the streets. It's going to take something like that to get any of this stuff addressed.
Yeah.
Look, I think you do vote for. I think you vote for Macron. That's. I mean, I voted for Hillary Clinton and I voted for Joe Biden, for those same reasons.
Yeah, I understand that. I appreciate the bluntness. If I can, for me right now, I'm really focused on the legislative, because that's going to be, in my mind, the important thing where we can restrict the power of a Macron or a Marine Le Pen to be able to deconstruct social programs, to do things like that. And the party of Jean-Luc Melenchon really has some chances of having a lot more seats.
See, yeah, that's what's important. Like that like the lower elections, and I don't know how it works in France, but like that would be my concern about any abstinence strategy, which is like, okay, if leftists are just going to stay home on election day, what's that going to do to everybody else that needs to win an election that day? And that's the what you do at the top of ballot. Again, like vote from. I understand why people have a tough time supporting him when he's like I mean, every freaking part of the guy. And so like I think that's less important, but I do think like if an abstinence strategy included like I'm going to go vote for these other elections that are important and maybe like the choices are a little bit better, then I think that's the important thing to emphasize.
Yeah, I agree with that. And well, you know, I have a lot to reflect on because I'm part of the people that think about abstaining, but I'm also really bothered by the idea. So I thank you for.
Well, thank you for your call. I mean, I appreciate hearing some insight into the conflict here of like, and Melenchon came so close. So that must be very painful, and I'm sorry that you're going through that right now.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Goodbye.
Goodbye, Jean. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, my choice to vote for Joe Biden in New York State was really like, first of all, I don't put much stock into it. I don't think it's that important, but also it's just like a rhetorical thing. So when you're arguing with people, there's certain type of folks who will take, if you say, yeah, I voted for him, whatever, I still think like all these A, B, and C suck, whereas those people would just tune out. And I'm less interested in appealing to like Green Party folks because I don't think their head's where it should be.
Nope. I was on the campaign trail, interviewed some Green Party people, and it was an interesting experience. Anyway.
How's the People's Party doing?
Yeah, checking in on that.
How are the people that suggested that might be a good use of people's energy? Are they?
They're doing anti-vax stuff now.